There is a Facebook comment by one of my listeners, Charles Hales, saying life and death are complementary processes of life, different sides of a coin, so to speak. It's religion, mainly Christianity, that has distorted the meaning of death. Death is not something to be afraid of. This is from Charles Hales on the Facebook. Yes, brethren, your words have gone global. So now, if we look into the whole concept of life, for example, now, within this planetary structure, we know that the cell is the building block of our life, the cell. And we can go around that. Plant cells and animal cells, and the cells of man. So there is a level of the orogenesis that is molecular, non-visible, egg and sperm. And that will multiply and multiply, and those cells will move from single cell to 2 to 4 and grow and multiply until the cells can transform themselves into things like tissue. And so the evolution would move from tissue to organs. But everything is coming from a cell. The scientists would have to, or the evolutionists, usually have to find a way of explaining the first cell. Where did the first cell come from? Because if our life comes from cells, then there had to be, in their thinking, a first cell. Well, if you try to examine a first cell, you have to look into what is it that makes up a cell. And you get into the elements that make up the environment. Talking about gases. We get into the chemical makeup. We talk about atomic structure, protons and neutrons. These are the elements now that are going to be the substructure to even the cell itself. So, man in his reasoning right now, we have to see the genesis of a self coming from single cells to the point where we are this complex and visible and vibrating at a higher rate. Because vibration now is another phenomenon. It is a vibration of the molecules that allow us to sense and allow us to see. And the denser the vibration is, the more the things become solid. The higher the vibration is, the more difficult for us to see. Then we have to begin to hear, and it moves along wavelengths. So I'm saying this to say to the item now. Locked into Christendom in the Western world, we have been also locked into a system of fear. And one of the greatest fears put up into our brain is the fear of death. And the second one is really like the fear of God. We don't really have any great fear of what they call the devil. There's no great teaching to be afraid of what they call the Satan. But we are programmed to be afraid of God. So the fear of death, the fear of God, lock up into the black man brain. Difficult to liberate himself. Because the notion of life and death has been confused. Him think that life and death are opposites. And if you look into the fullness, there can be no opposite to life. Because life is really energy. And there is no opposite of energy. Energy is what is omnipresent. Energy is what transforms through vibrations. So if we understand the notion of vibrations and energy, then the fear factor of death can be dealt with. Because the death would not really necessarily be an end of life. It's a transition of the energy that is within life. Metamorphosis. Question maintains, when a mango drop off a tree, is the mango dead? Is the mango dead? Cassidy, is a dead mango that? It's not dead. But it cut off from the tree. The tree was keeping it alive. Eh? It what? It finished grow. Alright, so it cut off. Yeah, that's serious. Yeah, him said don't grow. If the green one them drop off a feet, them his feet problem that. But the point is now, we have to look at this notion now that we have been given to us. And it has really created an industry in the Western world. Debt is an industry. And a lot of money is being expended around it and about it. And a lot of psychological theories are developed and people are made to feel guilty when death comes around, and there's a whole heap of rituals that take place. And you have to realize now that people have been dying and things have been dying ever since things have been born in. In other words, now, birth and death are really two ends of the same place, two sides of the same coin. And if you realize that the coin really have a third side still, in reality. Soon figure out what that side is relative to birth and death. That may be the immortal life. Because it's the energy, It's energy being transformed from one level to another. The fear is that at death, there's something that remains. And that something now is where a lot of mythologies have been created around. The Christians have their mythology, and so do the Africans. For example, the Egyptians have their mythology about the afterlife. So do the Christians. But the afterlife of Christianity is something that drives terror in African people. Yeah, that afterlife thing is a terrible state. And so, in our present life, we don't even deal with the present life positively because of the fears of this afterlife. So within the metamorphosis, again, we're going to look into some of the views of the afterlife of African people and look at the views of the afterlife according to the European Christians and look at the makeup of African people. The notion of a soul. We have tell us that we have a soul. And it's this that we must try and save. And so this is what becomes critical now for the afterlife in Christendom, this soul. Well, the black people now need a little space to step back and examine if we really have anything called a soul. That was introduced to us in the Western concept through the book of Genesis and about air being breathed into this dirt creation and it became a living soul. This is the introduction of the word soul to African people through the Bible. And we have to stop and explore this whole notion of soul. What is it that we are trying to save? And if there's nothing to save, then we have to deal with now. We have to deal with the now in the present without fear of the death. So the idea now is to recognize that that is not something that is a specific event to human beings. It is an event in nature where birth occurs. So it is natural and it is inevitable. And whatever is inevitable ought not to be feared. Rather, it ought to be understood. It ought to be studied. You ought to come to know it because it is inevitable. One of the events that are inevitable is like the sunrise and the moving of the sun in the evening. These are inevitable things in nature, so we can begin to prepare and we can plan. The same thing for this phenomenon that we talk about. It is inevitable. So the business end that is created, we need to re-examine that. Because you see, when we see violence and death, and every time you say it's just God's will, and these are acts of God, it forces you to look into what is the source of death, and is death equivalent to evil? Yeah, and then what then is the source of this thing called evil? Because the wrath that we're feeling in the social societies, the violence, the dismemberment of families, it bringing on death. It's bringing on death quickly. But if we recognize the naturality of it, rather than fear it, maybe then we begin to approach our living in a different way. I don't know if the item over still, but the metamorphosis.
jazz. Me always tell my virgin them say no. I and I is a part of the revolution. But Rastakura, nah carry no weapon. No weapon. So, it's a food war me a fight. I'm a must win. It's a food war me a fight. That's why we plant the pumpkin. It's a food war me a fight. What? Yes, the planting.
This is Rastakura. Yes, seed we are dealing with. Defend seeds. And if you plant seeds, you must take care of them. And I talk to the man, them know in particular. Yeah.
Jamaican food versus USA fast food. I mean, genetically manipulated seeds and animal cheese incorporated. You ever hear about a thing named beef potato or beef pork tomato? Yeah, man, them have them things at all. And enough more GM foods. A rasta, be careful of soya beans in the eye. We have to store we own seeds. Cause for years, ganja stand up, face off with coke. Till him get him bread a crack. The other world, ganja no bother. Him just lean back and grab her. So it's a food war we in now. And Kura is a survivor. Again, it's a food war me a fight. And we must win. It's a food war me a fight. What? You think it's all the while you get dumpling? It's a food war. No more starving. The man with the most food, he must win. Till it's some more, till it's style some more from August Town. Me hear the lion roar, so me pull up the food basket, take it to Papin Market, strictly organic. So the Rastaman plant it, so me plant it, and so me yant it. To be forewarned is to be forearmed. Get yourself a farmer.
Greetings, massive. This is yours, Freddie McGregor. We feature to the world right now a man called Iman Blak. You don't know him deal with Metamorphosis, and him give us a great vibe around here. Bust it again one more time and teach the people. Iman Blak, Iman Blak.
Portlanders, Akan Auto Technology, located at 33 Bomber Crescent, Port Antonio. Visit us for all your auto repair and servicing. We offer computerized wheel alignment, computerized wheel balancing, suspension checks, AC repair, inspection, and all your auto repair needs. For complete auto repair and service, visit or call Akan Auto Technology today at 715-5205. And remember, we are located at 33 Bomber Crescent.
When you're busy at work trying to meet the boss's deadline, it is easy to forget it's past your lunchtime or home time. No worries, Zilla's Kitchen, located at Bridge Street, Port Antonio, will deliver your breakfast, lunch, or dinner to you. Call them at 453-6030. That's 453-6030. Zilla's Kitchen, open 24/7.
Do you have or are you seeking a place to rent, seeking employment or have a job vacancy? Are you selling a car or having a garage sale? Then come see us. Let Styles do the advertising for you and you'll be on your way in no time. Contact us at 876-286-9216 or 439-5160. Advertising Style. Advertise with Styles.
Take us to work. Take us on the go. Take us wherever you go. Styles FM.
Take Styles FM with you on the go. The number for USA, 213-992-4360. That's 213-992-4360. And for the United Kingdom, 033-0010-3322. That's 033-0010-3322.
Styles FM.
Tune into Stars FM. Metamorphosis, one of the best things to happen to Jamaican radio.
cellular theory, cellular biology. We are cellular beings coming from single cells that have multiplied into these billions of cells that have their own complex organs and functions. A being that we call ourselves man, male and female. Now, the power of birth, the power of creation, the power of birth. The birth is creation in all forms. There are processes that you have to engage in to procreate. And as I was mentioned earlier, one of the essential ingredients is the seed. And the seed is a power because the seed has within it the power to regenerate itself. That is a seed within the seed. And if you look at a giant oak tree in its majesty, it is coming from an acorn. And all of that is made up of cells. So just trying to bring across the item that we are cellular beings. And cells experience birth and cells experience death. The stars in the cosmos experience birth and the stars experience death. But there is life, eternal. Because the energy that is life is infinite. But there are activities. So within the realm of man, there is birth. There is also marriage. There are other milestones as we put them. And the chapter is closed with death. But is it really closed? Because the Africans in their tradition spoke about the afterlife, suggesting that there is an energy that continues in time. Life itself continues because there is no destruction to life. Energy transforms itself. So the process now of birth, if we understand birth, maybe we can get a better grip of also what the thing called death is. Because it's a natural phenomenon happening to all of the kingdoms that make up this planet and its life forms. But something has gone awry in the head of the black man. That we have been distorted now in our thinking and our fears about this thing called birth and death. Confusing birth with life and not recognize that death is also a part of the cycle. So in birth, at the level of the human being, of man, we know that the male release millions of a certain type of cells. And I want to propose to the item who are listening now that the journey can be imagined and examined. Because if you look at the movement now of these cells out of the testes and the scrotum and this ocean where these billions of cells are stored and created, we have to recognize that when these cells are released, it is a race. It is a race, it's a sprint. But it's a long distance sprint because it's really a marathon. And these cells have to journey quite a way, I imagine, in womb time and womb space to get into these tubes of fallopian and to find if there's any egg available for penetration. And if you recognize that these cells are conscious, These cells are not unconscious. These cells have life in it. Because the cell is the foundation of life. So it's life moving through, searching for life to connect, to make this entity manifest itself. But the point I really want to get at now is that these cellular life forms, this sperm that is moving at top speed, I am saying it has a will. There is consciousness already at that level of the cell. And these cells are in competition because it is a race. And the weak shall fall by the wayside, which is exactly what happened. And ultimately, you know, when these cells come in sight of an egg, there are some forces that go to work. Forces of attraction, forces of repulsion, fundamental forces that are in nature. And these forces are operating at the cellular level, and they also operate at the big people level, because we are still cells. So the journey, which could be 1,000 miles, as far as I'm concerned, through these cosmic journeys, that ultimately, through the vibration of the sperm cell and the cell of the egg receiving the vibration that are complementary to its vibration, will allow one sperm to enter. I am saying no, this sperm was determined, more determined and better in tune than all the other sperm, and demonstrated willpower and a desire to come to life. So the parents now are on the outside telling themselves that is them a make a picnic. I'm suggesting to them that there's a consciousness that has a desire to born. And like ideas, struggle for birth. So maybe what we call children is not we bring them here. Maybe these children bring themselves here. Maybe each eye that is present is responsible for bringing the eye self here. Think it out.
Who were the founders of
According to the ancient Egyptians, the body was made up of several parts. The Ba, or the soul, the Ka, or the life force, and the I, the force of divine inspiration of life. According to the ancient Egyptians, the body was made up of several parts. The Ba, the Ka, and the I. To survive in the afterlife, the Ka needed a corpse to remain intact. And that was only possible through the technique of mummification. Metamorphosis into Alkebulan. Yeah, Metamorphosis will continue now. In this section, Alkebulan, our story, Kemet, speak to you about the philosophy and ideas that the Africans had about death before being infected with Christian European thinking about death. Because cells have been dying from the day they were being birthed. The cycle has been going on. And so civilizations and cultures have developed their own ideas and cosmology that surrounds birth and death. But from the time I've been captured into this Western plantation and had certain things driven into our brain through force and brutality, part of that, of course, is the fear and the misunderstanding of ourselves and how we have been constructed and what happens when the Ka has to separate itself from the Ba. So we have been having our own experiences, and so if we begin to explore the ancient Egyptian culture, it will unlock much of the truth that we need to know about our black selves and about ideas of birth, death, and rebirth. Because Christendom locks off the notion of rebirth, and Christendom puts in it a place called heaven and hell. And these places obviously are opposite to each other. And Africans now, black people, have been trying to outdo each other to get into heaven. One piece of jostling going on. And nobody can, there's not enough space for everybody. So each black person has been showing that he's more righteous than the next one. That some great God will see and make space in heaven. But the idea of death now within ancient Egyptian culture is outstanding, because the ancient Egyptians recognize not only life, but they recognize an afterlife. And that was tied into the scientific techniques of mummification. Mummification was the preservation of the body after the doctors had removed all the organs. And all that was really left was the skin. And so the mummification process was about preserving the skin. Now the skin of the African is special because the skin maintains a certain organ, certain sensation, certain vibrations that maintain feelings. So mummification was considered a very important ritual. It prepared the body for, it was prepared by the knowledgeable priests. They had to have great knowledge in anatomy, that they could extract the organs from the body without much damage. And the organs were now placed in jars. The rest of the body was wrapped in linen and soaked in chemicals. And that promoted the mummification. Now, this is science. This is technology. Ancient African people realizing the power of the skin. This also realizing that there was a concept called the underworld. And it was guarded by the gods of the ancient Egyptians. Where at death, your ka was judged against the lifestyle that you had while you were on this planet. So I said to the item, no, we need to revisit the Egyptian mythology and Egyptian philosophy on death and afterlife, and see if we can balance it with what we have been given from the Christian perspective. Realize that the concept of the resurrection is an Egyptian construct, which is a rebirth. And much of that was drawn from observation of the sun going through its cyclic movement, that there was a birth, an ascension, a death, and a resurrection happening in nature thousands of years before the birth of Jesus of Nazareth. So African people have had their concepts of death that wasn't driven by fear, but was driven by understanding that it's a part of the cycle of life. Metamorphosis.
Can't control the spell that's come over me. I see rivers that flows down to the sea, mountains so high, trees that reach the sky. It's pleasing to see. We walk the proud land, honey. We walk the proud land, spend our money. We'll be as free as the birds, the little birds in the tree. Yes, I know that is the right place to go. Plenty of cows, animals that you don't know. The grass is so high, cattle cannot die. It's nice to raise a family.
The universe in Egyptian cosmology was centered not on God, but on Ma'at. Ma'at, M-A-A-T. Check out Ma'at. Principles of truth and justice. That was the center of the African's universe. Not God, the author of destruction and the creator of evil. Because that is the notion that we have of God, the maker of all things, good and evil. The Africans had no such notion of a paranoid, jealous God. That was a construction of Moses. It is Moses' God that is jealous. It is Moses' God that is a wicked and a warlike God. So, death was not something that the ancient Africans feared, because they would lose their soul and it would go to hell. Because in the center of the earth, nobody knows what's there. They're even of late discovering that there may be oceans deep in the center of the earth. There's no house of fire. Those are deceptions, those are illusions. So, the notion of death as an end may not necessarily be the way it is, because energy really has no end. So there is a notion of a rebirth. And in the rebirth of this energy, we go into the science of genetics. We go into energy being transmitted to generations. And this becomes the rebirth. Because it is energy which cannot be created nor destroyed. But the fear is that people want to be holding on to their identity. They want to remain individuals. Well, if you understand the genesis, that you're really coming from a collective, you're coming out of an ocean. And so from the ocean, you commit into the ocean, you shall return. One with everything. Between birth and death, we have this space and time which we must conduct what is called living. Yeah, between birth and death. And this is where it becomes complicated now, because living can become torturous. Living can become suffering. Therefore, it's not simple enough to just to be alive. Because to be alive and suffering, there are better choices. So when a man says, give thanks for life, what does that really mean? If within that life, it's pure suffering. Yeah, we have to move beyond just giving thanks for life, because we have to begin to demand now certain type of quality within life. Conditions of health, conditions of wealth, conditions of prosperity. So, yeah, man, I say it's okay, because as long as you have life, well, we will always have energy. But do we control the energy, or are we tools? And do we become part of an enslavement with our life? Because then know that to me now make more sense. That my life is all about being a slave. Between birth and death, I want to experience prosperity. I want to experience leisure. I want to be able to get rest. But it looks like for black people now, those things don't exist. It's all about work, 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 and slave. And more work and more slave. And debt and bills. So some effort has to be made to transform and change the quality of our living. No. Because debt is inevitable. And it's important that we accumulate wealth, that when death arrives, the generation that we create who still have life can be prosperous. Yeah, it's a new way of thinking originally, because enough of our original thinking get beat out away. And this big wall that's set up in front of us called death, which the suicide bombers, as them call them, martyr bombers in their own culture, have no real fear, because they can see beyond and into the next generation. Because it's vision, you know. It's vision. It's important that we open up our eyes and have vision. And in that vision, realize that we have to improve the quality of our lives now. And to be driven by fear and not act is another form of enslavement. So, recognize what is inevitable. And if you're here and you're alive, it's because it is your will. And likewise, it was your will to be born. It must be your will to live and to be prosperous. Christianity now has interfered with the will of the black man and has told him to surrender his will and follow the will of Jesus. To resurrect ourselves, we have to reclaim our will. So you see the Father's will that has been turned over to, given up by man. We have to reclaim the will. Yeah, we have to reclaim our will. Critical thing, you know. Because the prayers that we pray, that thy will be done on earth, and whose will shall be controlled, make us free up with own will. Metamorphosis.
Hey. Oh, Africa. From Babylon, cause a you corrupt, the ghetto youth, we don't know wicked act, who know Babylon. When me walk, I trample down Babylon, talk and ride down Babylon. Who know what ways they have with your clans and plans, won't come trapping the man, who no think, who no can come take Mama Africa from we again. No, who no can come take Mama Africa from we again. Who no think, who no can come take Mama Africa from we again. No, who no can come take Mama Africa from we again. True religion, you bomb down a Lebanon. Lick yourself and a blame Afghanistan. We do no tricks and cons, implement a plan. Then you go dig down Saddam. We see you a draw nearer and nearer, but the Isle mama got now go share ya. Oh, me nah get scared, we defend the square. Oh, Pasha Shama long girl, you no can come take Mama Africa from we again. Who no think, who no can come take Mama Africa from we again. No, who no can come take Mama Africa from we again. Who no think, who no can come take Mama Africa from we again. Them no like when we are in at the hills. Them want we steer up.
Yeah, they tell us that the first death recorded in the Bible, the first death recorded in the Bible is the death of Abel. This is the first human being in God's creation that has going to experience death. Now, we don't know if when he died, his soul went to heaven, or maybe don't know if heaven was ready yet. We don't know if when he died, his soul went to hell, because Satan was there waiting on him. So early in our indoctrination, we are confronted with a death scene. And this death is not an ordinary death in terms of how society is set up. This is a murder. But before even the murder is committed, we are told that there is a creation of the heavens and the earth, which suggests that the planets and the galaxies were being created. We are told that all of this took place in 7 days, and I suggest 7 nights as well. And we are left to believe that in a 24-hour period or one rotation of the earth, all the plants grew. And all the cells multiplied at such a phenomenal rate in 24 hours that there were forests and great trees across the planet. This, of course, we know could not be literal. And so the concept of time, now we have to kind of expand it when we try to even look at birth and death from the biblical concept. Because rather than 7 days, I think they're really trying to say 7 different eras, 7 geological eras that would consume millions and millions of years. So one of the things we have to do to free ourselves from the fear of death is to understand the concept of time. Not the linear time with a start and an end, but time in terms of energy. There is no beginning to energy. There is no end to energy. There is no beginning to time. There is no beginning to space. These are constructs of energy that are infinite. So, we've been given the story that in a few days, fish and bird and elephant and all of these things were made. And ultimately, the first 2 human beings would be made. So black people generally know, who are biblically trained, hold this in their brain as a kind of beginning, a starting point for their civilization or humanity. But we are given a story before that. And this is now about divinities. These are stories now about angels and gods and satans. So we have recognized now the levels of the information. One set of stories is about man and animals and plants and things on the earth. And we have been given a story before that now that there was a kingdom of angels and gods and satans that dwelt in some place, but there was no earth to dwell on. And then we are told to imagine now that in this kingdom there is an almighty power. And it is this almighty power now that is responsible for creating everything, including himself or itself, out of nothing. This is the height of insanity. But we have to accept it because it was forced into us. So in this kingdom, there is this almighty. And we must realize now that the concept of morality is going to be introduced. Because morality now is a concept that deals with good and evil and indifference. So morality now has three sides, and we must recognize the three sides to morality. Because this Roman philosophers insist that there are only two sides, and they call this view a duality. So you're either good or you're evil. You're either right or you're wrong. You're either in or you're out. The African perspective was a little bit wider, because there was also indifference, separate from good and evil. And there was yes and no, and there was neither. And there was none of the above. And there were more options to our thinking. All right, so we're looking at this kingdom that has these divinities in it. And in this divinity, kingdom of divinity, there's one supreme ruler. We are not told that in this kingdom there are several rulers who share the dominion. There's one tyrant, autocrat, a czar. And the czar is in charge of this kingdom. And we hear that the czar has some lieutenants. And these lieutenants are angels. Where the morality becomes a problem now is that we hear that one angel challenges the leader for leadership. And this challenge now is going to be construed as evil. Now, I don't really understand how, if somebody challenges your leadership, how can that act be one of evil? Challenge is a challenge. So we are told to believe that the Almighty Ruler was challenged by his angel, and that this challenge was out of order and insubordinate. And this challenge led to war. Now I'm saying to the IDM now, as African people who have been given this story, realize now that when this war fighting in the kingdom, no people don't make it. This is a war between spiritual divinities. And they say that it's a war between good and evil. Now, in Africa, in the ancient traditions that we know, good and evil were never two forces that were fighting each other in heaven. Good and evil were manifested in your behavior. You manifest good behavior or you manifest negative behavior. Now we are being told that there are these two agents that are responsible for good and for evil. And that these agents were created. One is called the creator, and the other one now is called its opposite, which is the Satan. And so African people now have been locked into this confused struggle between the creator God and Satan, his creation. And these two ideas have dominated the meditation of millions of African people, trying to give service to the creator God, and at the same time living in fear of his twin, the Satan. Metamorphosis. So at the end of the war in heaven, Lucifer was considered the loser. And so now we are introduced to this concept of Lucifer that dominates people's brain up to today. Anything negative happen to you, and says Lucifer caused it. It is never the person. It's always Lucifer. So this marks the beginning of shifting of responsibility of those who commit evil onto some invisible invention called Lucifer.
In Sherwood's forest, seeking bread for poor. Ita go jam up down in Joseph. Yeah, ita go red down in Joseph.
So here we have invisible fighting, invisible angels. Of course, they were all white because the kingdom was lily white. So war in the kingdom. The Creator, Lord God, against and his army against Lucifer and her army. Because I think Lucifer was a woman. Bright, beautiful, most beautiful one in the kingdom. Otherwise, it was a pretty man. There's a pretty youth. So this battle now, we as African people have been left to work it out. This mythology. And in this battle now, we must choose a side. And we're told that good will overcome evil. Not knowing that the evil was created from the good. And that the good and the evil is the same in that story. So we choose. They say we must make a choice. They say we can't serve two masters. We don't need to serve any master at all. So two masters have been given to us. And we say, if you follow one, that one will guide you into heaven. If you follow the other one, it will guide you into hell. All of this is imaginary. All this is mental. None of this is real. But it's projection, and it is strong. So who is the hero? We hear that Lord God is a winner. And in his victory, he boots Lucifer out of the kingdom of heaven. And Lucifer gets black on his way down and lands in the Garden of Eden. The serpent in the garden with the seek out some punani. So far, nothing has dead, nothing has died. Angels have not died. Nothing is dead, everything is alive. Wonderful. So there's no experience yet of death in that story. Because the angels don't die. Angels can't die. So the Lucifer that was created, according to the story, cannot die. Angels are eternal. So if Lucifer became the source of our sin and evil, then that is forever. There is no end to that, according to the story. So, what happens? We hear that evil now descended on the earth in this angel and his hosts. And would engage in God's creation. Deal with the woman. Introduce her to the serpent. Put life in her. In other words, now, fat her up. Children are created. So, children are coming to the earth now. One through Adam and one through Satan. And in their struggle, we have the first death. Because there's a murder. Does Abel have a soul? And what happens to the soul of Abel? What happened to the soul of Cain? Apparently, heaven and hell weren't made yet for these souls to go into. So it's a later construction. So you see, the fear factor now is something that has been built up over time. Because the idea of a hell and a heaven is a mentality. There is no physical location for these places.
You gave I King James Version. King James was a white man. You built a dangerous weapon.
I wonder who buried Abel. Cain kill Abel. So who bury Abel? Or a junker eat him? Who bury Abel? And then now Adam and Eve had another child, another son, you know. So there are three children in all, and there were three sons. Cain, Abel, and Seth. So how did Seth have his children? Hey man, incest, just relation in that creation.
Man, get up, stand up on your foot, and give black God the glory. Black man, get up, stand up on your foot, and give black God the glory.
And when did death become evil? When did death become evil? When did the natural parts of the cycle of life become evil? I wonder about that now, you know. Because from the creation story in the Bible till now, death has been enough. From Abel to the genocide of Lord God when he wiped out the earth. So you go from fratricide, you have all kind of side, you know. You have infanticide, you have fratricide and matricide, you have homicide, and you have genocide. All these things in the creation story, right up to the flood. So death has been a scourge. It's a natural activity. And we say, Lord God is not a joker when it comes to death. I'm slew you when I'm ready. Without any fear. So I say to the African people now, we need to shake off this obsessive fear and begin to focus more on our living. What we're doing in the living, what we're doing in the now, and how are we preparing for the inevitable? Because the inevitable now is the children, not the future. Children are not the future. The children are the inevitable because of procreation and because of life itself. So rather than focus on the fear of death, we should be concentrating on the prosperity that we can achieve in this life. And we have to prepare for the time to come. Yeah, in a different way. In a different way. In a different way.
Lucifer, son of the morning, I'm gonna chase you out of earth. Iron shirt and chase Satan out of earth. I'm gonna put on an iron shirt and chase the devil out of earth. I'm gonna send him to outer space to find another race. I'm gonna send him to outer space to find another race. Satan is an evilous man, but him can't choke it.
It seems to Iman that the books of the Old Testament deals with death in a natural way, as a natural part of the cycle. It is in the New Testament now with the introduction of Jesus of Nazareth that they try to put a twist now on this, the simplicity of death. Because here we are now being introduced to an individual now who is going to die and to be rebirthed while physically grown and big. In other words now, this is this is what is the what they call it the headache. This is a lie, simply put. This is what contradicts nature. This is what has astounded the imagination of so many people. Because the narrative, the story that was written, tells us now of a man who experienced death and reborn within a few hours. Not in his children, the way it is done naturally, through genetics. But the impression is that the death was a complete death, and the birth was a complete rebirth. It forces one now to also explore what is it that defines death. Because we are cells coming from one cell. Then at a certain level, when all the cells are died, are no longer functioning, we can define the body as death, as reaching the complete death. No. In the medical field, there is an argument between brain death and heart death. But in the real world, I'm saying you can have a transplant of the heart, but the brain transplant is not possible at the moment. All the organs of the body can be moved in and out. Liver, heart, kidney, etc. But the brain is the centerpiece of the living man. And it is this brain now that we have to examine to make sure that the man is dead. Because if the brain is alive, then the man is not dead. And the brain doesn't die instantly. There are sections of the brain that dies before other sections. So it's a process. So the death is not an instant act because the body and the brain is a very complex system. So there are people who go into the coma for months and for years, and they are not dead. The brain has been turned down. There are people who have been put into induced comas, which means that the brain now is the almighty source, because we can turn down the brain. We can lower the level of awareness of the brain and still keep the brain alive. So the death of man, to be complete, means the complete brain has to die. And in the African, even when the brain dies completely, the skin of the African is still alive. Which is why the Egyptians would mummify the skin and keep the skin alive through chemicals and scientific technologies. So the Jesus construct of being dying on the cross is questionable. I have a question whether Jesus died on Calvary's cross, because nails in the hands and the feet and a juking at the side doesn't bring death to the brain. And the death of the brain is a total death. So when a man is nailed up, and if you even shoot him, it doesn't suggest that the man is dead. The man can be unconscious. The man can slip into a state of coma. The man can stay in a coma for months. So the illusion of Jesus' resurrection is what has been holding black people. And the fear and the hope and the whole resurrection that black people now internalize, that they now want to be resurrected in the name of Jesus. Fantasy. Fantasy.
Yes, we're getting stronger, and Babylon I get weaker. Yes, we're stepping up stronger, coming harder, ain't looking back, feeling stronger, ready to launch the attack. Do you remember when we were the cream of the crop? Is the Bible and the carbon we got?
We need to remove Jesus out of the black family. When we say we need to remove Jesus as the head of the black family and resurrect the man, that is where we need a rebirth in our family